Tell me your story a little bit.
I was 7 years old when I walked down an aisle at my home church in central Illinois, and I remember it was such a long walk. I mean, I just remember scared to death, but I wanted more than anything to follow Jesus. I was 16 when I went on my first mission trip. I ended up going to Christian college. My goal was to work on the mission field. I mean, my whole life was going to be about ministry. What I wanted more than anything was to serve Jesus. I had been doing ministry as a speaker, a preacher, a communicator. I traveled all over the United States and the world doing inspirational messages. It looked like, I did what God called me to do, and now my life was going according to plan, because that's how it works, right? That you do all the right things, and then God...
You get all the blessing.
You get all the blessing, and God's on the hook to bless you for all the good things that you did. And that's what it looked like, and that's what I believed. Until it was a Tuesday before Thanksgiving of 2010, and I got a phone call, and it was from a doctor who simply said, first words out of his mouth are, "Michele, I'm sorry, it's not good." And that day, I was 39 years old, and that day I discovered that I had squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue, cancer of the tongue. Yeah. First of all, I didn't know that even existed, and I used to be a nurse. I had no idea. Second of all, I didn't have any of the risk factors. I mean, this squamous cell carcinoma of the cancer of the tongue are typically, 75-year-old men who smoke and drink, and I wasn't any of those things. I was healthy, I was strong, going, wait a second, this is not how the math is supposed to add up. I did everything right. How did I end up with a result that is so very wrong? Fast forward, that initial diagnosis was cancer caught early. And the doctor said, "We got it all, you have nothing to worry about," except they were wrong. And over the 4 years that followed, cancer came back 2 more times, each time more aggressive and significant than the time before. By the 3rd time I was diagnosed, they didn't make any promises of a cure. They didn't, basically they gave me 2 weeks to get my affairs in order. They did a 9-hour surgery where they removed 2/3 of my tongue. They cut an incision in my neck that was about 8-9 inches long. They took out my submandibular gland, multiple lymph nodes. They did another incision on my arm to take out vessels and tissue to try to rebuild my neck and face and mouth. I mean, I was literally on the brink of death for almost 2 years and dealing with extreme physical pain that would not be relieved. My voice was really part of who I felt like God had equipped me and called me to be. And now, I lost my speech, I lost my tongue, and everything from here to here was being severely burned by radiation and chemotherapy.
I think oftentimes as Christians, we think if we do the right things, then all of these good things will come. And that is why when fire comes, we're so surprised.
Absolutely. If God has equipped me with the ability to speak, and to be someone who talks about the good news of the gospel of Jesus, and has the ability to be, on platforms, arenas, public speaking, and then the very thing that I use to talk about the God that I love is taken away, help me understand that. Why is that? What is this whole faith thing? I mean, if I obey God and still can end up with a life that's off the rails, then why? Why do it, right? Why follow Jesus? And I had to really wrestle through what I believe to be true about God. One, decide, is God real? Because I prayed and prayed and prayed and he didn't answer. If he's real, is he good? We're talking about just really basics of faith. And then if he's real and he's good, can I trust him? I finally had a breaking point where I understood that life with God and life without God both come with suffering. But life without God is void of any hope. So I could either have suffering and no hope, or I could have suffering and hope, just somehow believing that there is a God and he's good and he will somehow work all of this out. I had to wrestle with and face the reality that my sense of a good life was wrapped up in an outcome, not in a person. I was not following Jesus out of love for just Jesus. I was following Jesus out of love for what he could do for me. I no longer feel that way anymore. I still travel and speak, but I do so with a very obvious speech disability. You know what I've discovered? It is not in spite of my challenges that people listen. It's actually a direct result of it, which means that I didn't need to get through the hard things so that I could experience Jesus. The hard thing is the very thing that I experienced, the reality of Jesus. The suffering was the place where Jesus hung out with me. The suffering was the place where I finally discovered that God is not just a genie in a bottle that's on the hook to give me a life I want, but he is so beautiful and so precious and so wonderful that there are even times now, although I would never go back and go through that again, I miss the sweetness of Jesus' presence that I experienced in the fire. There is something that we see of God's nature and character and his reality in those places of suffering that cannot be matched anywhere else.
There are people who are watching who are suffering.
Oh, yeah.
They feel it in ways that we can't imagine, but we know it's real. Mm-hmm. If you had them right across from you and you could lock eyes and say a few things to them, what would you say to them?
When we are in a season of suffering, it's a human temptation to believe that either God is failing or we are. That somehow we're being punished for failing somehow, or somehow he's mad at us or he's abandoned us. That it's either God's failure or ours. And we need to get rid of that lie on both counts, because sometimes suffering is just a part of this human condition. And so I always come back to Romans 8, where Paul says, "What then shall separate you from the love of God? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced," and this is so important, I love this list because it's like Paul is saying, no matter your suffering, no matter your hard thing, no matter what it looks like, it's all included. "For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any power, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate you from," and this is the punchline, you ready? "Separate you from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus your Lord." This hard thing, this suffering, this loss, this fear, whatever it is that's keeping you awake at night, don't for 1 second question God's love for you. And you may feel like you don't have the strength to get through this thing. It's okay, because you have a God whose love for you is so infinite, so oceanic, that he will carry you through. This is the real miracle. Not that I'm cancer-free at the moment. The real miracle is that I got to experience the reality of God in the land of the living. That's the miracle, and he's going to do it for you.